Rizal loves art like him, but art has different forms. Jokwai is a dancer, and dancing is one of the most extreme form of art. And though Jokwai grew up in the USA, he studied his native language. He also knows his culture by heart, and he is proud to be a Filipino.
That you do. I was born and raised here in New York. I had to take ESL because in the home, my parents spoke Kapampangan to me, and my parents are from Pampanga. So that's the only dialect, the only language that I spoke. And when I finally learned how to speak English, my parents thought that it might be better if I spoke English as a primary language. So they spoke English back to me in the home. And that resulted in me forgetting a lot of Kapampangan. In retrospect, I do think that we all kind of regret it because being bilingual is such a great skill. But at the time, they were young and they were probably thinking, it would just be for the better. It's New York and it's a tough neighborhood and whatever. As of today, I speak very little Kapampangan, just mostly common phrases and commands that you would use in the home. I'm nowhere nearly as fluent as I used to be. I don't speak Tagalog. I grew up with a bunch of Kapampangan relatives, so Tagalog was never necessary, and my parents never taught it to me. I'm trying to learn from a small little book and from the Filipino channel and just from listening to other Filipinos speak Tagalog, but the process is really slow. But I badly want to be able to speak Tagalog fluently. I can tell you what game can. Other than that, I do speak a little bit of Spanish.
If I can, I'm going to try to talk about the life of a Filipino American, at least from my eyes, because luckily I am a Filipino American. But I get asked this all the time, and the question never seems to go away because there really is no direct answer, just like all these vlogs I've made and all these requests that I've addressed. So really, what is a Pinoy? There's so many answers to that question, and everyone has a different interpretation of the word. Some people are even offended at the word. If I could, I would say that a Pinoy is somebody who embraces all these things, mostly stereotypical, these things that make a Filipino a Filipino. We can go on and on what those things are, and some of them are funny, some of them are serious, but those characteristics, when they're embodied, when they're encapsulated in one's personality, that person is a Pinoy, in my opinion. Which is why I also believe that the word Pinoy is not exclusive to people of Filipino heritage. There are people who are not Filipino who love some of the things that are part of our culture. I'm not just talking about food and music. I'm talking about the little things, the little subtle things that we as Filipinos know about one another. We know that we have these mannerisms, and we know that we have these trinkets at the house and things you own, and we say things a certain way, and we gesture in different ways. These little subtle things that we all, especially the younger generation, we all make fun of and we all tease other Filipinos about. There are people who are not Filipino who embrace that and who love that and think it's great, and sometimes it's just because they're friends with Filipinos, sometimes because they married a Filipino. Either way, they are people who are of outside ethnicities, and they are adopting what we hold to be Filipino-esque. They are adopting that into their own lifestyle. They are Pinoy. What is the life like for a Filipino living here in the United States? Difficult. That's why we all want to go back. It's a little hard to describe the life of a Filipino here because there are those who are born in Philippines and raised there, and then there are those of us who are born here in the US and became a little bit more or a lot more Americanized. Of course, I could describe one type better than the other, but I'm going to do my best to describe the two of them. For me, growing up and just all of life, it's always been a game of balancing who you are and who you need to be in order for others to accept you or to work with you. You could interpret it as going along with peer pressure, but it's not always that. And you could interpret it as trying to be one of the others, but it wasn't always that either. It's just that when you entered a school or a workplace or you just stepped outside of the house and society didn't have anyone that was like you kind of, here in the East Coast, in New York anyway, I always felt that I had to conduct myself in such a way that getting along with others, working with others and talking with others was better, easier, I should say. And then when you get home, you can be as Pinoy as you want. You can be a Jolog. You don't have to be someone that you're not. And I try to stay away from saying it like that because I really don't believe it was ever trying to be like someone else. That's not what life was like for me. I wasn't trying to be like the others. And I guess I was just trying to find a groove in society so that I could get by and find success for my own life, whatever that was. But when I get home, I could be who I truly am. And at least that's what it was like for me here in New York, in the East Coast. In the West Coast, it's different. There's a lot of Filipinos. Over here, I did not have one Filipino friend until mid-high school. Okay? The only thing I had were my cousins and my brother. This is going to be a little bit more difficult because basically I'm going to be describing the life of my elders, at least how I saw it. And I could see that I could imagine it was a bit more intimidating and much more scary. Because as Filipinos, they were very self-conscious of speaking English in the big city. You know what I mean? Trying to get a job and asking people for directions. And what I've noticed, and I admire this so much, but the Filipinos who were born and raised in the Philippines, they're the ones who, how do I say this? They're the ones who have refused to compromise. For me, I was born here in America, so it was a bit easier for me to adapt, and I'm the one who has to balance left and right. But what I've noticed from my elders and from cousins and friends who were raised in Philippines, they don't really compromise what they were given in the Philippines when they come over here. They make others embrace them. And for the most part, people who are not Filipino fall in love with them. Because they think they're charming. They think it's wonderful that they're speaking English, even though it's not their first language. Filipinos are using bigger words than Americans do. If I could choose, do I assimilate or do I keep what makes me Filipino? I would definitely choose to keep what essentially makes me Filipino. I actually find that lately in the business world and in just in certain areas, being very cultural has been a real strength. It's been something that others are admiring. Is there a gap between Filipinos born and raised in the Philippines and Filipinos born and raised here in the U.S.? Here in the East Coast, or at least in New York, no, there's no gap. They can teach me how to drive stick better than I could probably teach myself. But I could teach them how to write an awesome resume to land that job. So, there's no reason why I should draw that line. At least I've never found a reason. And thank God, neither have they. So.
Now, do you see heroes?
We do.